Hey guys, it's Matt Somerset with Snap Fitness, and today I wanted to take you through another mindset change here on the stages of progression. So the whole idea of this is based on our body fat percentage, how do I slowly get results either by ramping it up or ramping it down and still keeping this health and fitness lifestyle or the ambitions that I have for what I want my body to look like. So let's jump right into it. So today we're going to go over part one of this, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go over the transition zone model of fitness, and we're going to explore the different zones of fitness. And this is going to take us right into the second part, which is how to create our own roadmap, how to make progress on your zone, how to score it, and how to use the scoring system. So how do you actually take something away from this? So you're going to want to watch this first part to get into the second part, but I broke it out just to keep the video fresh and only a certain length, okay? So let's go over it today. So I call it the building blocks of health nuts, okay? But the whole idea is that we're building on a transition zone. So let me show you what I mean. So our first zone is called foundations, and let me tell you why. The whole idea is if I'm not currently, so if say I'm past the obese, so based on my body fat percentage is kind of how this model works. My body fat percentage I'm taking as my result. Now some of you are going to say, why would you do something like that? That's depressing. Well, I'm going off the notion that because we're a certain body fat percentage, we're not doing certain things. And now if you're doing certain things in each of these little boxes that you're seeing, like the eternal beginner, the average, and the healthy lifestyle, usually you get around these levels of body fat. And you'll be able to pick these people out anywhere you go. So let me explain the first little level here. The beginner is the eternal beginner. Either they got hurt or are hurt. They have dieted hard before and then dropped off, or they just don't really care too much about a health and fitness lifestyle. Okay, they're just more out. So usually they're got some body fat that they would really enjoy getting rid of. Moving on into the average, really, where it's like how hard is the transition zone to get into each area. Next would be average. So average, if you're a male, you're about 18 to 24% body fat, and for a female, you're about 25 to 31. Okay, it's a range, but usually you'll be able to pick these people out who do these, like there's certain elements to each one, and we're going to get into it shortly. And finally, the healthy lifestyle would be like the health nut. The person who eats fairly healthy, they're really fit looking, and they do an exercise program almost religiously. They don't spend too much time in the gym, but they do go to the gym often. Okay, and that's the healthy lifestyle thing. And we're going to get into it, exactly the strategies that they use. But for right now, I'm just showing you the framework of how would I take somebody who is complete. So I would line up to these, and then I'd make sure I'm doing everything within these boxes before I moved on to the next box, okay? So that's called the foundation phase. Next, we've got the performance phase, okay? At this stage, usually we're either trying to hit a certain level of body fat because we want to look a certain way, or there's a sport or something that we're trying to perform for, and we want to be as agile and whatever as possible for my specific sport. So I broke it down in amateur athlete and professional athlete. Usually they're one and the same, but the whole idea behind it is if somebody's coming from a healthy lifestyle and getting into this performance phase, they're usually going after a look. They're not necessarily trying to do it for a sport. So usually they're in the amateur athlete stage, but they're really pushing towards building the same lifestyle habits, so to speak. So I broke those two down. That's called the performance phase. Usually it's for something to do with moving more proficiently, doing something with that, and they're really regimented. And finally, last but not least, we get to the third stage, which is level 3 of body mastery. So you're like extremely stretched at this phase in your life, and usually it's a model or a bodybuilder or something to do with those, some mixture of those two things where you would even try to get down to that. And if you watched my video on body composition, they are the people who are trying to get closest to the essential fats as possible, okay? And that's kind of what makes them what they're after. And usually they're after extreme leanness to show as much muscle mass as possible, and it's for a competition or something. Okay, so let's move on to each individual area here. And what I call these is the zones of transition. So you're going to want to remember that. What zone are you in? And we're talking about your zone of transition. So from where you are to your next step. Okay, and once you get all the little pieces in each box, then you can move on safely to the next zone. Okay, so let's get into it. Here is I'm laying out the foundation here, and we're going to break into the eternal beginner. So if somebody's been hurt, they've never been exercising before, or they've done a big extreme diet, and then they've always end up being more, if not more, body fat than they ended up with. You fall in this eternal beginner, and usually you're over 25 if you're a guy and over 32% if you're a woman for your body fat levels. Okay, and these are the steps. So I call these the performance markers. The little icons that I have here, and we're going to explore each one. So the first thing you'll note about these people is that if I just start adding in more vegetables, you're going to see results. Okay, these are like the little levers that if I use, I'm going to start to get results. As I stack them up, my results are going to get infinitely better. Okay, so at this stage, getting 1 to 2 fistfuls of vegetables per meal at 1 to 2 meals is a good rule of thumb. Okay, and the whole idea is it doesn't really matter how you use these strategies as long as they're getting in there. So if throughout the whole day you decide I'm going to try to hit a fistful or two for the whole day, you can take it that way. Next is processed foods is huge. You're always going to find that you're going to, like, anytime you start something, you're going to drop the processed foods. And the whole idea is that they're taking the place of whole foods, so like vegetables or protein. So our next one is our protein intake. So 1 to 2 palmfuls of protein at 1 to 2 meals. It falls along the same suit as vegetables. And you're looking at your palm on this one, and you're making sure I'm getting that per day. Okay, so 2, if I'm doing 1 meal, then I'll focus on 1. If I want to get up to 2 meals, that would be my maximum, and I'm going to start to see some really solid results. Next is what kind of caloric drink. So at this stage, usually it's like a lot of beer or a lot of wine. Maybe it's just that you're having like orange juice or something like that, but usually it's in large quantities, not in like small controlled quantities. It's usually just, you just enjoy it, so you're just enjoying it. And it's the biggest toll, I would say, is the caloric beverages is the biggest, easiest thing to overconsume, and your body decides it's going to just utilize it to build body fat, okay? Next, at this stage, your exercise is really just getting moving. So 3 to 5 times a week for at least a half an hour, any activity, any intensity is kind of the go-to, okay? So if I'm just going to get moving, that's what I'd be aiming for 3 to 5 times a week where I'm getting some activity in. And that could be from walking to doing some cardio to joining a gym and just doing some resistance. It depends what you're used to, what kind of person you are, and you just got to get moving. And finally, last but not least, is eating behavior. And it always comes down to too much, too little, or too fast, okay? And what we're trying to do is get a nab on it so that at least half of our meals we're eating consciously. So we're slowing down on our meals. We're making sure that we're eating enough so that we're not extremely hungry, only to overeat and then eat too much and feel stuffed. Okay, we're trying to control that, and at least 60% of it. So 50% would be awesome. 60% you'd be overexcelling in this area at this stage. Okay, and all you're trying to do is better, improve on it, and this gives you little strategies to improve on. So moving on. So once I've established that, then I'm going to move on into the average side of things. Okay. This is like your average body weight, so your body fat percentage, and most of these people look fairly healthy. They definitely work out, and they just look healthier than most people in society that don't do anything, okay? So at this stage, we're looking at about 3 meals where you're getting at least 1 to 2 fistfuls of vegetables. You're going to cut back on the processed foods only because you're adding more vegetables and you're adding more protein, as you're going to see. But so at this stage, you're enjoying in moderate amounts. So you might have wine daily, maybe. You might cut back on the beers that you're having on the weekends, whatever it is, but you're really moderating how you control your processed foods and your caloric beverages at this place. You're also making sure that you're not splurging on it. So you're eating it. Maybe you might overeat at certain extents, but you're making sure that you're eating until you're full, or like 80% full, and of the processed or caloric drinks. So you're being mindful of that. 3 meals per day of 1 to 2 palmfuls of protein is the given. If you're at this stage, you've got a healthy exercise program, so you're exercising daily. It doesn't mean that you're going to the gym or whatever. It just means that your heart rate is increased. You're going for a hike, you're biking, running around with the kids for at least 30 to 45 minutes, and 1 to 2 sessions where you're sweating pretty hard. So you've probably got an exercise program where you're working out with some weights or some form of cardio, and you're going to be sweating at those 2 sessions. You could even bump it up to 3. Next, sleep becomes important, and if you're getting at least 7 hours a night, everything should be flowing very well. And that's pretty much at this stage, that's all you got to worry about. Finally, your eating behavior, we bump it up a little bit, so only 25% of the time you're consuming too much, too little, or too fast. Okay? So this could be over a week, or it could be over in your days, but the whole idea is 75% of the time you're ensuring you've got enough food so you're not feeling starving, and you're not eating too much where you're feeling stuffed, and you're making sure you slow down on your meals so you're actually digesting them properly. Moving up, once I've established that, I'm going to get into the healthy lifestyle zone. So at this stage, typically these are your health nut people. Okay, they've definitely got a gym routine, they eat fairly healthy foods, and they've cut back on a lot of the junk stuff that most people consume. Okay, so at this stage, your veggie intake is about 1 to 2 fists. It's at all meals though. So, and the whole key to this is that you're changing the variety and you're changing your vegetable choices. So you're never constantly like in the same rut where you're eating the same foods day in, day out. You're always kind of switching around with your vegetables in the variety and in your choices, right? So I would choose, let's say, I don't know, onion, green pepper, and some spinach or something would go in one meal. Then the next meal would have mushrooms, maybe red peppers, and some kale or something. So you're always kind of changing up the variety of it and your vegetable choices within it. You're never stuck in a rut. Next, your processed foods kind of go down to just like special occasions and every now and then, maybe like a movie night, going out with the wife, something like that, where you're keeping it controlled. You're making sure you're only eating until you're satisfied, but you are consuming some processed stuff. You are having a couple drinks, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what that lifestyle entails. Next, you've got your protein intake. Really at this stage, you're just making sure that you've got protein in all of your meals, and that's snacks included. Snacks don't have to be complete at this stage, but they do have to be in there. And we've got another video coming that'll explain that, but just get your protein in there, like nuts, seeds, all that kind of stuff. Next, exercise. At this stage, you've got a periodized program, and likely at your weight training, you've got like a build program that you're doing for so many weeks, a burn program you're doing for so many weeks, a foundation program, and of course, you've got your like strengthening program, and you're able to like switch between those, and you're pretty consistent with the actual programs. That's this stage. And daily, you're pretty much on the go all the time. So 3 to 4 sessions is your weight training regimen, plus a little bit of cardio maybe. But most days you're getting about 45 minutes to 60 minutes of activity outside of the gym, okay? Or even at the gym. It depends on what your lifestyle is all about. Next, relaxation is important. So at this stage, you might add some relaxation techniques like bringing down the stress levels by meditating, socializing with friends, like doing something you enjoy. You have more freedom in life, right? So you're enjoying life more. Maybe you spend some time with some old people, and help out at an old home's place, that kind of thing. Like whatever brings you joy, you spend some time doing it. Plus, you're getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So you're getting a little more sleep. Finally, fats and carbs become big. Fats in the fact that they're healthy and varied, okay? So between the 3 types of fats, the monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, and the saturated fats, you're getting a good mixture of those, and you're not sticking to just one fat source. And finally, you're consuming whole quality carbs versus processed carbs. So you're eating whole grains versus breads, like the flours and that kind of thing. And you're consuming more starchy stuff versus like grains and flours and that kind of thing. So you're sticking to like potatoes and yams and squash, that kind of thing. Finally, your eating behavior is pretty well under control. everything you do is usually like it's because you want to or you had it planned where you're going to enjoy this, but you hardly ever overeat, you hardly ever undereat, you're never really super hungry, and your eating speed is under control. So when you eat, you're actually digesting your food and you're being conscious of your eating. Okay, we're going to move into the next stage now. This is the amateur athlete stage. This is like somebody who really wants to get their body, like they want a different look for their body fat. They want to look even more lean. That would be this kind of person. And at this stage, what you're trying to do is get fibrous vegetables in your diet. Okay, 1 to 2 fists, all meals. Doesn't matter. Your processed foods is like every second week. So you have like cheat meals or bump meals, but really at this stage, you're not consuming processed foods on a regular basis at all. It's like it's very far and few between. You're eating clean protein sources. So this would be like organic or grass-fed meats, like something that it ate what it should be eating, and it's not a conventional source of beef or chicken. It's more clean meats, and it's more lean, okay? Lean and dense. So each meal would now have a dense protein source. So it'd be like a chicken, fish, that kind of thing. And you'd have like secondary proteins like nuts and seeds and all that kind of stuff, but you'd mostly stick to whole sources. Next, your relaxation. You'd be using some relaxation techniques, the same thing, but you'd be looking for about 8 hours of sleep. And relaxation techniques would be some supplementing in order to, and depending on what energy system you're using. And also on top of that, you'd also be looking at making sure you're doing something you enjoy during your day. Same as healthy lifestyle, except you're going to add in supplementing to make sure your recovery on your muscles is doing what it should be doing. You're going to be having more homemade meals, or somebody's going to be making your meals. So most of the stuff is high quality, and it's going to be made from scratch, okay? Your fats, now you're focused on essential fats. So this is your omega-3 fatty acids and your omega-6. Becomes super important at each meal, ensuring that you're getting enough of the essential fats. Finally, your movement is 60 to 75 minutes per day, and you usually have about 5 sessions per week where you're sweating pretty intensely. Okay, so you're ramping that exercise right up. Carbs, at this stage, you're really focused on whole grain sources. So if I'm going to eat something, it's going to be starchy or it's going to be a complex carb, and it's usually going to be around my post-workouts or designated for higher carb days. So that'd be like a bump meal. It'd be for your workout days usually. We're not quite cycling at this stage, but we are getting close to it. Finally, your eating behavior, because you've got a goal, because you're trying to lose weight, gain weight, whatever it is, you're eating based on that and only on that. There's really, like, your emotions might draw up, but you're going to make the decision that gets you towards your goal versus what you feel like doing in the moment. Okay, that's a big distinguishing factor of when you get into performance. And the same thing never changes at the professional level. It just gets more intense, and there's more intention behind it because there's a lot more at stake, okay? So at this stage, same thing, fibrous vegetables come in, all meals, all like daily, it doesn't matter, and you're getting about 1 to 2 fists. Usually it's more regimented. It just depends what that person or who's coaching that person, what they're going to sports for, and that kind of thing, what sport they're in. At this stage, every 1 to 2 weeks again, but they have like refeed days where they can enjoy a little bit. Usually that's where processed stuff comes in. Caloric drinks are very minimal. The only time they're having caloric drinks is if they're having intrameal shakes or something like that, or some kind of supplement that helps them with their sport. Okay, they'll have like caloric drinks just to make sure they got enough calories. Clean protein never changes. Every single meal they have a dense protein meal. Of course, if they're vegan, it's just they have a lot of plant-based foods and they've got a big variety of mix. But same thing is all clean protein. That's important at that stage. Your meal plan is huge. They have a strict eating schedule. Some idea behind it is like breakfast, pre-training, intra or post-workout shake, a post-training meal, and then of course before bed, depending on their goals. Okay, so they may have just to make sure that they're gaining some muscle, or to make sure they're properly fueled up, or to make sure they've got enough calories for that day, depending on how many calories they've got. Sleep and recovery is big. 8 hours to 9 hours wouldn't be too much to ask, but they're also big on recovery supplements to make sure, based on the energy system they're working, they can utilize all the energy. They're also doing things that they enjoy to a certain extent when they've got time. So they're in that PNS system. part of your body is activated. Also, they know their calorie estimates and they know their calorie needs and they eat based on that. So they're tracking it, they're counting their calories in, calories out, and they're tailoring it based on what they want to do. Cutting, or do they want to build, or is it strictly just to perform for their specific sport? Finally, essential fats doesn't change. They're getting a good mixture of all the different types of fats, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, and saturated, and they're getting it in the quantities that they need. At this stage, usually it's macroed out, so they know exactly how many grams of fats they need, and they're hitting it. Dedicated exercise at this stage, so 75 plus minutes of daily exercise, 5 to 6 sessions a week where they're sweating, and that'll also include their sport, right? So whatever they're playing, that would be included in this as well. At this stage, depending on what they're trying to do, they'd be carb cycling to make sure they can hit a certain weight class or whatever it is for them. They'd be eating carbs at post-workout for sure and at designated higher days that they're working out, and they'd be basing on their body type and their goals, which is a big one. Finally, their eating behavior is just strictly on goals. They know what they want to hit, they know they got a big solid purpose for what they're doing, and they eat strictly off of that. Everything is by their books. They might have a little bit of slack, but it's really, really regimented, that's for sure. So their behavior is in track. They eat based on what they want to do, not based on their emotions. Okay, now we've got the final last stage, is extreme shred. These are the people who are into the modeling, right? So at this stage, everything is in direct. Like, they know exactly what they need to eat. Everything's macroed out, and they're very intentional of what they eat, what time they eat, okay? So fibrous vegetables and starchy, as you'll see below, are both kind of included in one. It's called your carb count, and they're keeping track of how many carbs they're consuming based on the grams or some form like that, or they have a meal plan, okay? So your fibrous vegetable intake is going to be based on a macro scale. Processed foods, depending on where they're at, if they're competing, it'll be completely kicked out of the diet, and they'll be consuming foods based on how much nutrients is in it, and does it hit my macro count, and is it clean so that I can have a clean looking body, okay? Next is your lean protein intake is huge at this stage. Lean proteins take precedence over anything, so more chicken, lean cuts of fish, that kind of thing, and you're hitting about, the approximate is 1 gram per pound of body weight. That's a rule of thumb, but they do base it on results that they're getting and based on their body type. So it might go up to 1.3, 1.2 grams of body weight, or grams per pound of body weight, even down to like 0.7, 0.8 grams per pound of body weight, depending on who they're at, what their body type is, and if they're actually hitting their goals. Next is meal timing is huge. So it's a weekly or daily plan. They know how many macros they're supposed to have. They know what foods are going to help them to hit that, and they're going to eat those foods. And they're going to hit them, and they're going to eat them in precise amounts. And of course, there's some options here: breakfast, pre-training, post-training. They might do during, depending on if they're trying to build. Post-training meal, and then of course before bed to keep your body in a build mode. So in a anabolic environment is big when you're trying to build or when you're in bodybuilding or modeling. Next is sleep and recovery, 8 to 9 hours. 9 would be probably about right depending on how intense they're going, and usually they're going pretty intense. So sleep is critical, but also specific supplements, because they're working in different rep ranges and different energy systems are being used. Usually, so supplements for recovery on muscles, creatine, all that kind of stuff is going to help them to perform better, to do more exercise, more intensity, to get more out of their body so they can have that look they want. Next is macro targeting. So they eat based on their body type. So meso, ecto, and endo, which is the different types of bodies that you can kind of have. And they eat a macro, kind of like they have like a baseline of how they're going to eat, and they kind of tweak it from there. Okay, so if I'm a meso, I'd be like 50, 30, 20 is like the rule of thumb, and I could kind of switch that up, but I'd find out how my body reacts to that macro division. Next is the ecto, which is like the thin frame person, so they'd have like a 40, 30, 30, so 40% carbs, 30% protein, and 30% fats, or something like that. And finally, the endomorphic, which would be a broad and thick person, would be about 35% carbs, 25% protein, and like 40% fats would be a good solid starting point for them. And of course, they would They keep messing around with it and to hit the right result so that they can get the results that they wanted. Finally is fats, so 1 to 2 thumbs, 20 to 30% of daily intake, depending on the body type, like we just discussed. And it also depends on the results that they're trying to attain. If they're not getting the results with a certain amount of body fat percent or with a certain amount of fats they're consuming, they'll cut it back and they'll put those calories somewhere else. Next, you've got exercise. At this stage, you are exercising daily, if not twice daily, depending on if you're getting close to the competition. Okay, so it'd be 45 to 75 minutes at least throughout the entire day. Might even be 2 times a day, 6 to 7 days a week, and you're going pretty hard, but you're very dedicated on whatever it is you're trying to do. If you're trying to build, you're working out differently than when you're trying to cut. That's for sure. Carbohydrates, a big guy here is your carb cycling at this stage. You might be doing it in the athletic world too, depending on your goals, but at this stage, carb cycling is massive and it's a great strategy to get your body fat even lower. So they're doing a calorie carb cycling, but they're also making sure that their macros stick within the 40 to 60% range of their total calories. Okay, so this is between starchy and fibrous carbs. They don't distinguish between the two. It's your total, and that's your carb intake for the day. So they'll disperse it between that. Finally, we've got calorie estimating. Of course, they're going to know their calories. They're going to keep a good, solid track of what they're eating and what their body is doing based on what they're eating. And their eating behavior is dead spot on. Everything is to the books, to the meal plan. You eat like that. Based on your results, you start to tweak things, but unless your body's not doing what you want, you eat exactly as you've got planned out. And that's it for today, guys. I'll take you over part 2 coming up, but that'll be enough for today.